There's one airplane more famous than any other, Air Force One, the plane that carries the President of the United States. But keeping it in the air takes hundreds of specialists working around the clock in jobs you've never heard of. When you see Air Force One on TV, it looks perfect. Shiny paint, roaring engines, everything flawless. But behind the scenes is a massive operation. Mechanics working through the night, specialists testing every system, security experts checking for unimaginable threats. This isn't like maintaining your car. Air Force One has to be ready to fly anywhere in the world at a moment's notice, working perfectly every time. The president's safety depends on it. National security depends on it. These specialists have one of the most important and stressful jobs in America, so buckle up. We're taking you behind the curtain to show you what it really takes to keep Air Force One in the sky. Let's start with the mechanics, because these are the people who do the heavy lifting. Air Force One has a dedicated team of aircraft mechanics who work on nothing but these two presidential planes. These aren't fresh recruits. These are the best of the best. They've been specially selected and trained for this job. These mechanics do things that would blow your mind. They don't just fix problems when they come up. They prevent problems before they happen. Every single time the plane lands, it gets inspected. Not a quick look. A serious, detailed inspection. Mechanics crawl all over the plane checking everything. They check the engines, looking for any signs of wear or damage. They check the landing gear, making sure every bolt and joint is perfect. They check the wings, the tail, the doors, the windows. They check systems you've never heard of. And if they find even the tiniest problem, even something that might not cause issues for months, they fix it right away. Here's the crazy part. These mechanics have to be ready to work anywhere in the world. When Air Force One lands in some foreign country, the American mechanics go too. They don't trust anyone else to work on the president's plane. So these guys pack up their tools and travel with the plane, ready to handle any issue that comes up, no matter where they are. The job is incredibly stressful. Imagine if you made a mistake and something went wrong with the plane. You're not just risking lives, you're risking the president's life. You're risking national security. That pressure would crush most people, but these mechanics thrive on it. They take pride in knowing that they're the ones keeping the most important plane in the world flying. Security for Air Force One goes way beyond just protecting the president when they're on board. Security starts long before the plane even takes off and continues even when the plane is parked. There's a dedicated security team that guards Air Force One around the clock. When the plane is at Andrews Air Force Base, armed guards watch it. 24 hours a day. Nobody gets near this plane without proper clearance. And we're not talking about basic security clearance. We're talking about the highest level clearances that exist. But physical security is just the start. Security specialists also check the plane for threats before every flight. They sweep the entire aircraft looking for anything suspicious. They check for explosives, listening devices, or anything else that shouldn't be there. They use X-ray machines, chemical detectors, and specially trained dogs. When Air Force One travels to other countries, security gets even more intense. American security teams travel ahead of the plane. They check the airport. They check the fuel. They check everything. They don't trust anyone else to handle security for the president's plane. The plane itself has defensive systems that are classified. We don't know exactly what these systems are, but experts believe Air Force One has missile defense systems, chaff and flare dispensers to confuse missiles, and other countermeasures. Security specialists maintain and test these systems, even though we'll probably never know the details. Flying Air Force One is the most prestigious job a military pilot can have. The pilots who fly this plane are the absolute best. They've been flying for years, they have perfect records, and they've been through extensive background checks and evaluations. But just having great pilots isn't enough. These pilots train constantly. They practice emergency procedures. They practice landing in difficult conditions. They practice dealing with threats. They fly in simulators that recreate every possible scenario. They're probably the most well-trained pilots in the world. There are always multiple pilots assigned to Air Force One. They rotate so that fresh pilots are always available. On long international trips, there are usually 3 complete flight crews on board, so pilots can rest and stay alert. The pilots also have to know more than just how to fly. They have to understand security procedures. They have to know how to coordinate with fighter jets that escort the plane. They have to know emergency protocols for all kinds of situations. Flying Air Force One isn't just about moving the plane from point A to point B. It's about safely transporting the most important person in America. These pilots also deal with unique pressures. officers. They're not just responsible for a plane full of passengers, they're responsible for the president. They're responsible for national security. One mistake could change history. That's a lot of weight on their shoulders. The engines on Air Force One deserve their own discussion because they're incredibly complex. These 4 massive jet engines each produce over 50,000 pounds of thrust. That's the power needed to push a nearly million-pound airplane through the sky. And keeping these engines running perfectly requires a whole team of specialists. Engine mechanics do more than just maintain the engines. They rebuild them. These engines get torn down and inspected on a regular schedule. Every single part gets examined under microscopes. Every measurement gets checked against exact specifications. If anything is even slightly out of tolerance, it gets replaced. The fuel system is another full-time job. Air Force One can carry over 50,000 gallons of fuel. That's enough to fly halfway around the world without stopping. But that fuel has to be perfect. It gets tested before it goes into the plane. Specialists check for water contamination, check the fuel quality, and make sure nothing bad is mixed in. And here's something wild. Air Force One can refuel in mid-air. There's a special probe that extends from the nose of the plane. A tanker plane flies above it and connects a fuel line. This lets Air Force One stay in the air almost indefinitely if needed, but this system has to be maintained and tested regularly. Specialists practice the refueling procedure and make sure every part of the system works perfectly. Engine specialists also monitor the engines during every flight. They track performance data, looking for any signs that something might be going wrong. Modern engines have sensors everywhere, and these specialists know how to read all that data. They can spot a problem developing before it becomes serious. Now let's talk about the electronics, or avionics as they're called in the airplane world. Air Force One has some of the most advanced electronics on any aircraft in the world, and maintaining all of this technology is a massive job. The avionics team handles everything electronic on the plane. The navigation systems, the communication systems, the radar, the computers, the displays in the cockpit, all of it. And there's a lot of it. Air Force One has electronics and systems that normal planes don't have. Secure communication systems, defensive systems, advanced radar and sensors. These systems have to work perfectly because the president needs to stay connected to the government and military at all times. Air Force One is basically a flying White House. The president can run the country from the plane. They can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world securely. They can receive classified information. They can even authorize military actions if needed. The avionics team tests these systems constantly. They run checks before every flight. They simulate different scenarios to make sure everything works. They update software and firmware. They replace components before they fail. They're constantly monitoring, testing, and improving. One of the biggest challenges is keeping up with changing technology. The plane's basic electronics are from the 1980s, but they've been upgraded many times. The avionics team has to integrate new technology with old systems. It's like trying to connect your new iPhone to a computer from 1990. It takes skill and creativity to make everything work together. Communication is absolutely critical for Air Force One. The president needs to be able to talk to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and those communications need to be secure. You can't have other countries listening in when the president is discussing sensitive matters. Air Force One has over 80 different telephones and communication devices. There are secure phone lines, satellite phones, regular phones, video conference systems, and encrypted communication systems. All of these have to work perfectly all the time. Communication specialists maintain all of this equipment. They test the phones before every flight. They check the satellite connections. They make sure the encryption systems are working. They update security protocols. It's a never-ending job because communication technology is always changing. Here's something most people don't know. Air Force One has its own mobile command center. The president can hold secure video conferences with military commanders, cabinet members, and foreign leaders from the plane. The communication specialists set all of this up and make sure it works flawlessly. These specialists also have to think about the worst case scenarios. What if there's a nuclear war and normal communication networks are destroyed? Air Force One has backup systems for the backup systems. It has equipment that can communicate even if everything else fails. The communication specialists maintain all of these emergency systems and make sure they're ready if they're ever needed. We've talked about mechanics, engine specialists, avionics teams, communication specialists, security, and pilots. But there are dozens of of other jobs that keep Air Force One running. These are the unsung heroes who work behind the scenes. There are logistics specialists who plan every detail of every trip. They figure out flight paths, backup airports, fuel stops, and contingencies. They coordinate with air traffic control in multiple countries. They make sure everything is ready before the plane ever takes off. There are supply specialists who stock the plane with everything it needs: food, drinks, medical supplies, office supplies, emergency equipment. Air Force One carries enough supplies to be self-sufficient for extended periods. All of that has to be ordered, stored, loaded, and tracked. There are medical personnel on every flight. These aren't just basic first aid people. There's a full medical team with advanced equipment. Air Force One has a medical suite that's like a small emergency room. The medical team can handle serious emergencies at 30,000 feet. There are communications coordinators who manage the president's schedule and make sure everyone knows where the president is and what's happening. There are military liaisons who coordinate with other aircraft and ground forces. There are White House staff who support the president during flights. All of these people work together like a well-oiled machine. Everyone has a job. Everyone is essential, and if any one person drops the ball, it could cause serious problems. You might think cleaning Air Force One is just like cleaning any other plane. You would be very wrong. Cleaning this plane is an intense operation that goes way beyond vacuuming the carpets and wiping down the windows. The cleaning crew has top secret clearances. They have to, because they see everything. They clean the president's office. They clean the conference rooms where classified meetings happen. They see documents, equipment, and communications gear. They have to be completely trustworthy. But cleaning Air Force One isn't just about making it look nice. It's about security. The cleaning crew checks for anything suspicious. They look for items that shouldn't be there. They make sure nobody has planted any devices or left anything behind. They also have to maintain the plane's image. Air Force One represents America. When foreign leaders or press see the plane, it has to look absolutely perfect. Every window has to sparkle. Every surface has to be spotless. The famous blue and white paint job has to look fresh and clean. The cleaning happens after every single flight. The crew goes through the entire plane systematically. They clean the galley, the bathrooms, the conference rooms, the president's office, the press area, the crew quarters. They clean the cockpit. They even clean cargo areas and equipment spaces. That iconic blue and white paint job on Air Force One is famous around the world, but maintaining it is a serious job. These planes live outside, exposed to sun, rain, ice, and snow. They fly through all kinds of weather. The paint takes a beating. There's a team of painters whose job is to keep Air Force One looking perfect. They don't just slap on some paint when it starts to fade. They carefully maintain every inch of the exterior. They touch up scratches and chips. They polish the metal. They protect the paint from damage. Every few years, the plane gets a complete repaint. This is a massive project. The entire plane gets stripped down to bare metal. Then it gets primed, painted, and sealed. The process takes weeks and involves dozens of workers. Every detail has to be perfect because this is the most photographed airplane in the world. The painters also have to deal with special requirements. The paint used on Air Force One isn't regular airplane paint. It has to meet military specifications. It has to withstand extreme temperatures and conditions. It has to be resistant to certain chemicals and materials. Finding the right paint and applying it correctly is a specialized skill. With all these people working on Air Force One, you might think everyone just trusts that the work is being done right. Nope. There's a whole team of inspectors whose job is to check everything. These inspectors are independent. They don't answer to the maintenance crews or the pilots. They answer to higher-ups in the Air Force. Their job is to make absolutely sure that everything is being done correctly and safely. After mechanics work on something, inspectors check it. After avionics teams install or update equipment, inspectors verify it works. After the plane is fueled, inspectors check the fuel. After the plane is cleaned, inspectors make sure nothing was missed. Everything gets checked and double-checked. The inspectors follow incredibly detailed checklists. These checklists cover every system, every component, every procedure. Nothing is left to chance. If something doesn't pass inspection, it gets fixed immediately. The plane doesn't fly until every single item on every checklist is marked as complete and correct. This system of checks and balances is crucial. It prevents mistakes from slipping through. It ensures that even if someone makes an error, it gets caught before it becomes a problem. It's one of the reasons Air Force One One has such a perfect safety record. Coordinating all the maintenance, inspections, upgrades, and flights for Air Force One is like playing the world's most complicated game of Tetris, and that's the job of the schedulers. These folks have to balance competing priorities. The president needs the plane to be available for trips, but the plane also needs maintenance. Major systems need to be upgraded, inspections have to happen, and all of this has to be done without making the president wait or compromising safety. The schedulers work months in advance, planning when to do different maintenance tasks. They coordinate with the White House to know when the president will need the plane. They schedule maintenance windows when they know the plane won't be needed. They arrange for parts and supplies to arrive exactly when they're needed. But plans change. The president's schedule changes. International crises happen. Suddenly, the plane needs to be ready to fly immediately. The schedulers have to be flexible and creative. They have to be able to reorganize everything on the fly to meet changing needs. They also have to schedule the people. Hundreds of specialists work on Air Force One, and they all need to be scheduled efficiently. Someone has to coordinate who works when, making sure the right people are available at the right times. It's a massive logistics puzzle that never ends. Everyone who works on Air Force One goes through extensive training, and we're not talking about a few days of orientation. We're talking about months of intensive training before someone is allowed to touch this plane. New mechanics start by learning on regular Air Force planes. They build experience and prove themselves. Only the best get selected to train on Air Force One. Then they go through additional specialized training. They learn every system on the plane in detail. They practice procedures over and over until they can do them perfectly. The training never stops. Even experienced crew members go through regular refresher training. They practice emergency procedures. They learn about new equipment and updates. They take tests to make sure they still know everything they need to know. There are also background checks. Everyone who works on Air Force One goes through detailed security investigations. The government looks into their history, their family, their finances, everything. Only people who pass these thorough checks get to work on the president's plane. Why all this training and vetting? Because there's no room for error. The people who work on Air Force One need to be the absolute best at what they do. They need to be completely trustworthy, and they need to understand the massive responsibility they carry. One of the most important parts of keeping Air Force One running is preparing for things to go wrong. Because in aviation, things can always go wrong, and when you're carrying the president, you need backup plans for your backup plans. First, there are two identical Air Force One planes. If one has a problem, the other is ready to go. This redundancy is crucial. It means the president is never stranded because of a mechanical issue, but it goes deeper than that. Critical systems on the plane have backups. If one communication system fails, there are others. If one navigation system fails, there are multiple backups. The plane is designed so that multiple things can fail, and it can still fly safely. The support crews also have backup plans. There are backup mechanics who can be called in if needed. There are backup pilots on standby. There are backup security teams. There are backup facilities where the plane can be serviced if it can't make it back to Andrews Air Force Base. When the plane travels internationally, an entire support operation travels with it or ahead of it. Spare parts get pre-positioned at airports the plane might visit. Backup communication equipment gets set up. Emergency medical facilities are identified. Nothing is left to chance. These backup plans get tested regularly. The crews run drills simulating different emergencies. They practice what to do if communication is lost, if an engine fails, if there's a security threat. They're ready for anything. Keeping Air Force One running isn't cheap, not even close. The program costs taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars every year, and that's not even counting the cost of new planes, which the Air Force is working on now. Every flight hour costs tens of thousands of dollars. That includes fuel, crew salaries, maintenance, and wear and tear on the plane. A single international trip can cost millions of dollars. Some people think this is too expensive. Others argue that protecting the president and ensuring they can do their job from anywhere is worth any cost. The maintenance budget alone is massive. All those mechanics, specialists, and support personnel need to be paid. Parts and supplies need to be bought. Facilities need to be maintained. Training programs need funding. It all adds up. But here's the thing. You can't cut corners with Air Force One. This isn't a situation where you can use cheaper parts or skip maintenance to save money. Everything has to be perfect because the stakes are so high. So the costs are what they are, and taxpayers pay for it because having a safe, reliable Air Force One is considered essential. The Air Force is currently working on new planes to replace the current Air Force Ones. These new planes are going to cost billions of dollars. Yes, billions with a B. They're being built using newer 747-8 aircraft with all new systems and technology. The program has faced delays and cost overruns, but eventually these new planes will take over, and then the whole maintenance operation will have to adapt to the new aircraft. So why do people choose to work on Air Force One? Why deal with the pressure, the long hours, the intense scrutiny? For most of them, it comes down to pride and patriotism. Working on Air Force One isn't just a job, it's an honor. These people know they're part of something special. They're supporting the President of the United States. They're playing a small but crucial role in national security and world affairs. That means something to them. Many of the people who work on Air Force One are military personnel. They view this as serving their country in the most direct way possible. They take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and working on Air Force One is how they fulfill that oath. But the pressure is real. These folks know that millions of people are counting on them to do their jobs perfectly. They know that the president's life depends on their work. They know that one mistake could have catastrophic consequences. That pressure would break a lot of people. What keeps them going is the team. They're not alone. They're part of a huge group of dedicated professionals who all have the same mission. They support each other. They check each other's work. They celebrate successes together and learn from any mistakes together. There's also a sense of tradition. Air Force One has been flying presidents since 1944. Generations of mechanics, pilots, and support crews have maintained this mission. The current crew sees themselves as continuing that proud tradition. They're writing the next chapter in the Air Force One story.